Hello, interrogators and interlopers. My name is TB Kain, and I'm a cat. If you don't know, I do a QA podcast thing, which is this thing that you're watching right now, where if you've given me money in some way, like Twitch subscriber, YouTube membership, Patreon, donation on coffee one time, you get access to the Discord. And on the Discord, there's a room where you can ask questions, and then I do this podcast where I answer them. And this is the one for November, and we're sort of kind of far into December already, so I'm late. So let's get into it. Also, usually I use my expensive VTuber model that I paid money for, but VTube Studio, the software I use, also just has this cat in there that you can use if you want for free. And so I decided to use the cat today, because it's kind of fun to be a cat. So I'm a cat now, for a bit. Anyway, Male Jade the Bundle Lady asks, what's some of the gayest and queerest pieces of media that you've watched and enjoyed recently? And that's a good question, actually, because I've been playing Mass Effect 3, which obviously has some queerness in it, but in that very early 2000s, early 2010s embarrassed way, where it kind of has to hide it and pretend and really de-emphasize it and hide it away and put it away. Because what if some censors get upset, or what if the gamers start sending bomb threats to our game studio kind of way? So I wouldn't call that queer art. Same thing with God of War. Well, not the same thing. God of War also has like a lot of queer-friendly themes, I'd say, like found family, Atreus' struggles with identity, like the fact that he tries on different names and like different versions of himself and sort of comes to terms with who he is. But also that wouldn't really be queer art. I think in terms of queer arts, specifically, I would really say it's mostly been manga that I've been reading, because I impulsively buy. So TikTok has so many accounts that just like post 5 or 10 pages from a comic and like tell you the title, and then I go on Kindle and then I purchase them, and I just have them, and I have so fucking many of them, and a bunch of them are gay and queer. Unfortunately, it's been hard for me to find any male, like any gay male or any non-binary, anything that deals with like non-binary identity, because if you try and look for like that, you sort of end up with a bunch of yaoi, which is not really the kind of thing I'm looking for. I don't really want something that's catered like to straight people or straight women, which most of that is. I want something that's actually from the perspective of people who have those identities, and for that, mostly lesbian stuff is what comes up. And I do have a couple of recommendations if that's what you're looking for. There is one called Even Though We're Both Adults, which, let me see if I can find the author's name. Where is it? Yeah, there it is. Takako Shimura, which is about this teacher in her 30s who goes to a bar, gets drunk, meets a woman, makes out with her, goes home with her, has sex with her, and they both fall for each other really, really hard. And that becomes a big problem, because the teacher is happily married to a man, and she loves him, and she doesn't want to leave him, and like she doesn't want to throw out the life that she has built with her husband, because like it's not like she's, oh, I'm unhappily married and I only did it because I was feeling forced to. No, she loves him and she cares for him, but also they have no romantic spark, they have no sex life, like they don't, she lacks that fulfillment of those things, and she struggles with, well, shit, like now what do I do, because I'm falling in love with this woman, but I love my husband and I don't want to throw my life out. It's compet, right? Like it's compulsory heterosexuality storylines. And then there's the lesbian that she's fallen in love with, who's been through this before, who has been like the person that some dissatisfied housewife used to try out a lesbian sex fantasy, or spice up her life a little bit and then go back to her comfortable life with her husband and then leave her in the ditch, you know? And so she has a lot of like bad previous experiences with this kind of thing, and a lot of distrust and trauma. And they both have to navigate those issues. Like they both have to navigate the fact that they are falling in love with each other, but neither of them, like they both feel like that relationship is a danger to them, like is unsafe for them. And it's very emotionally mature in that way. Like it deals with some stuff that is actually genuinely really fucking difficult, and deals with it from a very adult perspective, and I really appreciated that. On the somewhat more lighthearted side, and even though We're Adults is still lighthearted, it's a drama, but it's not like a screaming, emotional, pouring your heart out, crying drama, at least not as far as I've read yet. There's I Married My Best Friend to Shut My Parents Up, which again is one of those where the title kind of says the whole concept. This woman is tired of being constantly nagged by her parents to marry and have children, and she's like, okay, fuck, you know what, get the fuck off my back. I'm gonna get my best friend, who's a girl, and I'm gonna get a civil partnership with her and move in with her, because you have to do that for the civil partnership, and then I'm gonna pretend to my parents that we're lesbians and we're married, and then they can get the fuck off my back. And her best friend, who's a girl, is surprisingly okay with all of this. Guess why? And then it's like, yeah, I just did this because it was a convenient way to get my parents off my back. Hey, wait a minute, I'm developing feelings for this woman. Oh no, oh fuck, oh god. It's that kind of comedy, and it's very sort of cute and fun in that way. There's Donuts Under a Crescent Moon, which is a very... Not the world's most interesting, like, lesbian romance. It's a sort of a high school comedy romance thing that's just has a nice little art style. It's just kind of pleasant. It doesn't really have a strong concept. If You Could See Love by Teran Mikami is okay. Oh, I Think Our Son Is Gay is good. It's by Okura, and it's told from a perspective of an adult woman, a mother, who realizes that her son is gay long before her son is ready to come out, like, because her son is really fucking bad at hiding it. And so it's a story very much about her, like, trying... She really wants to be supportive. She really wants to be accepting. She really wants to create a beautiful, good environment for him where he can feel safe and be safe to come out. But she doesn't know how to do that because she lives in a fairly conservative Japanese society. And so it's about, like, that awkward dance of, like, oh, he has a bunch of porn mags with a bunch of naked dudes in them. Let's just pretend we don't see them. And then, like, when he says, hey, Mom, I have a girlfriend, you'd be like, oh, yes, of course you do. Definitely. You have a girlfriend. Yeah, for sure you do. Like, those kinds of sort of silly comedy situations. And dealing a little bit with, like, the discomfort that she has about, like trying to understand and be accepting of her son's sexuality. Like, again, porn magazines and stuff like that. So, like, it sort of touches on those discomforts, but it's from a very nice, kind, accepting point of view, and it focuses on her perspective, like, struggling to provide a good environment for him to be who he is, which I think is again, it's mostly a comedy. It's not that sort of, again, as far as I've read so far, it's not that, like, it's not like devastating and emotional or anything, but it's that kind of thing. Then there is My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness, which is a story, if you haven't heard about it, it went kind of viral on social media a few years ago. And this one is, like, content warning for everything. Lots of self-harm, lots of suicidality, lots of deep, dark, terrible depression, bipolar disorder. It depicts, like, a person... It's a diary comic by this girl this woman who is a lesbian, she thinks, trying to deal with just a whole host of really devastating mental and social issues. And it's all the more devastating because it's real, like eating disorders and alcoholism, and yeah. She's a mess, and it's a mess, but it's one of those things that's emotionally kind of very deeply affecting, frankly. And then if you want queerness, generalized queerness, I might recommend Nurse Hitomi's Monster Infirmary. This one is very sexualized. Like, this one is very ecchi, not pornographic. Like, it sort of toes the line on that. It never shows anything that's pornographic ever, but it does show subjects and discuss subject matter that is very, very sexual. And it does this in the context of a high school, so, you know, pay attention to that. But specifically what it is, it's a story set in a world where once you reach puberty, you become a monster. Like, specifically, like, you become a dragon. You could become a were-tiger. You could shrink down and become a tiny little 2-inch tall person, or a giant. Your lower body could be replaced with octopus tentacles. You could become a cyclops. You could turn invisible, become a tengu or a zombie, that sort of thing. And it's told from the perspective of Nurse Hitomi, who is the school nurse at a high school who sort of helps her students deal with these transformations as they happen to them. And each transformation of the student is typically a metaphor for some kind of internal conflict that they have within themselves, like some kind of emotional issue, or indeed a sexual issue that they have. Like, there's a lot of kink in here, a lot of weird, uncomfortable, strange sexuality, and indeed queerness. And I would say that this is probably some of the most queer media I have read in a very, very long time, especially as a comic, because it deals with all the uncomfortable, weird strangeness of having an unconventional sexuality. Not just in terms of being gay, but like, okay, so here's an example. One of the characters in the story is a zombie girl, right? Like, she has a body that's immortal, but also keeps falling up. Like, she keeps dropping her arms, her eyeball keeps falling out of her head, and she has a whole thing about coming to terms with that. George R. Romero shows up as a Bara demon-slaying, zombie-slaying demon granddad. It's really fucking cool. But George R. Romero shows up in that story, and she sort of comes to terms with like that part of herself. And then there's one of her classmates who has a fetish for licking eyeballs, which is a real thing. Like, eyeball fetish is actually a real thing. It's a very niche kink, but it exists. And he has that, and his classmate's eyeball keeps falling out and rolling under his desk, like right in front of him, and he's like, wait, why am I attracted to this? Like, what the fuck's happening to me? No, like, he struggles to sort of like, fuck, I have this weird compulsion. I'm attracted to this thing I should not be attracted to. I don't understand it. I don't know why this is happening to me. And he struggles to control himself and control his urges. And the story deals with that. Like, deals with, like, teaching him how to be respectful. And like, he has this weird kink, and he has so much shame about it. But also, hey, you have to learn to come to terms with that and be respectful. Do this with consent. Do it respectfully from other people. And he and the zombie girl sort of, like, she's sort of like, well, I don't really mind. It's just an eyeball. I don't care. You can play with it if you want. And they sort of develop this odd relationship. And that's the kind of thing that this manga deals with. It's the strange, unconventional, sometimes really freaky, weird parts of growing up, of developing an adolescent identity and a sexuality, and coming to terms with all the fucked up, strange parts of yourself. And especially as it relates to, like, sexual kink, but also emotionally. Like, there's a really cute lesbian love story in there about these two girls where one of them, her face got replaced with an infinite yawning dark void. Right? Like, she can still talk and speak and like, eat and all that, and she has relatively normal relationships, but she doesn't have a face, and so she has trouble relating to people. Like, people have trouble reading her, they have trouble decoding how she feels, her emotions, and she has trouble communicating them to other people because she doesn't have a face to do it with. And she has a lesbian romance with a girl whose lower half is replaced with octopus tentacles. And the girl with octopus tentacles has this urge to slide, like, she wants to squeeze into small holes. Like, she wants to squeeze into small places. And that also, by the way, real kink that some people have, like, be squeezed and like fill things up with herself. Which is, like, an odd thing. And there's a scene where, well, you can imagine where the tentacles go in that situation. And it's very sexual, obviously, because tentacles are going into an opening, but it's not pornographic. It's played fully as this romantic moment of connection, where someone literally, like, visually, literally someone else is filling the void. Like, because the octopus girl is the only one who can read the emotions of the girl without a face. She's the only one who, like, knows how she feels, who, like, has this emphatic connection with her and understands what she's trying to say and what she means, and who's always, like, on the same wavelength. And so there's this scene where this extremely sexualized imagery, like this imagery that we're used to being some of the lewdest and like just most pornographic imagery possible, which is tentacles sliding into an opening, that instead, thematically at least, becomes this moment of these two people connecting and, like, one fulfilling, like, they both fulfill a need for one another in that scene. And that's a remarkable achievement. It's also ecchi as fuck, I should say, but mostly the character who gets sexualized is Nurse Hitomi herself, who is an adult. Very much so. Boy, she has assets. Like, that's definitely there. She also has a love plot. Patrick Stewart shows up. He's a teacher at the school, Patrick Stewart, specifically as Captain Picard from Star Trek. And there's a Wookiee also, and of course, George R. Romero is there. And then there's a 2D girl who's made of paper who's aware that she's in a comic, and she has, like, this whole extended metacognition thing going on about, like, what it means to be part of a story and thing. Like, it goes some weird fucking places. It's one of the most unique pieces of art I've ever seen. It has an amazing art style. It goes some uncomfortable places. Like, it's not pornographic, I've said this many times, but it does involve the sexualities of teenagers, right? So keep that in mind. It's not for an adult audience, really. But I really like it. I think it is It is some of the most interesting and some of the queerest art I've seen in a very long time. Specifically in the sense of a queer being an outsider, right? So yeah, those are my... That was 15 minutes of talking about that. Great! Wonderful start to the video. I hope I don't get demonetized. Moving on. Vega, if I ask very nicely, would you maybe consider doing analysis of Silent Hill bosses? I can't. I have not played Silent Hill games, so can't do that, unfortunately. It's one of those game series I really want to play at some point, but when I played it, it scared the shit. I played Silent Hill 2, and I've tried several times, and it just scared the shit out of me so bad that I couldn't finish it. That was years and years ago. I've become much more desensitized to horror, so I could probably do it now, but I haven't played it yet, so not much chance of that happening anytime soon. Also, quick kind of meme question. How do you feel about at least 90% of your fan base being neurodivergent or just straight autistic? Well, you're wrong about that, I'm afraid. I have my YouTube analytics, and they tell me that most of my audience are male gamers aged 18 to 35. And there's probably plenty of autistic and neurodivergent people in there, but just statistically speaking, the vast majority of my audience is neurotypical. That's just the way it goes. The people who are on my Discord, on the other hand, the people who... who are regular commenters, the people who like subscribe to me on Patreon and stuff, I think you might be right that there's a substantially higher than average incidence of neurodivergence in that particular subsect of my audience. And I'm just mostly happy about that. Like, if I have managed to create a space where neurodivergent people feel comfortable and at home and feel like they can be themselves without constantly having to mask everything. Like, I know you can't create a perfect space, but, you know, that good. I take that as a success, as a compliment. I am happy if I've managed to do that. So, hey, I'm glad you feel at home here. Guess you deserve to. Variars's Frivolous French Fawn says, is there a historical period, place, culture, event, or more that you enjoy? I know it's a vague question, but I'm curious which part of history you'd be able to info dump on us. Oh, a couple, but, like, I think probably... I mean, being a walking stereotype, medieval Japan, Tokugawa-era Japan, and, like, Japanese history in general is a point of interest for me, specifically because of all the historical conditions that came together to create the closed country, like, that created the circumstances where Japan closed itself off so much to the outside world that it got stuck in essentially kind of a time bubble. Like at a medieval level of at a medieval organization of society, while the rest of the world changed in so many ways around it, and that the ways in which it was able to isolate itself so much from the outside world, not perfectly, but to such a great extent, because it's such an interesting confluence of historical circumstances that led there. It wasn't just that, like, oh, some Christians showed up one day and then the Japanese emperor was like, oh, and then they closed the country because it was the shogun who did that. But also because, like, it goes back to the relationship with China. It goes back to the relationship with Korea. The historical conditions of, like that historical fear of the outside world that Japan has had for so many years, because it has always lived in the shadow and the fear of the neighbor to the west, which is China. And, like, the ways, all these historical factors that come together to create the closed country, and then the ways in which Japan's peculiar social organization and history allowed the Meiji Restoration to happen. And, like, just the role of the emperor in Japanese society, what that personage has meant to Japanese politics and Japanese history, and, like the strange monarchism that still exists in that country today. It's very interesting. It's deeply fascinating, and I could do very long videos about that, but I won't, because I don't feel well educated enough to really give authoritative answers on it, unlike some other YouTubers I could name. I really wish people would, like, Japanese history is one of those, like, the more you learn about it, the more you should learn to shut the fuck up about it, because the more you learn about it, the more you should know how difficult it is to really understand. And I try to keep my mouth shut about it, even though it's hard because I want to talk about it, but just because it's complicated. Anyway, Ambrosia, is there a particular color scheme or palette that you're more drawn to than others in terms of character design? This may be too broad of a question. Yeah, I don't... I mean, I tend to not like really, really bright neon colored designs. unless it's very well balanced with like darker and more neutral tones to sort of, yeah, it's a very broad question. I can only give a very broad answer. Also, in terms of Norse gods and how they're depicted, is there a culture you like their adaptation or find it interesting? I've been rewatching your God of War playthrough. I'm sorry, I don't think I understand the question. Are you asking, is there a culture you like their are you asking me if there's another culture where I like adaptations of it? Or are you asking me if there are specific adaptations of the Norse gods and their stories that I like? Because I'm not sure what you're asking me there, so I don't know that I can answer that. Ambrosia, another question. Have you ever played the Legacy of Kain series? And if you have, what are your thoughts on its overarching theme and designs? Legacy of Kain. Now, there's a vault of memories. I played Legacy of Kain back on the PS1 when it first came out. And let me tell you, kids, like, streaming assets was a new thing once upon a time. Like, the power of the CD-ROM, eliminating loading screens from the video. Like, you didn't have loading screens between levels. It was fucking amazing. It was that generation's version of open world games for the first time. It was in all the gaming magazines, like, oh, this game, like, no, you load in for the first time and no loading screens. It's amazing. Which it genuinely was. I remember being very excited about it for, like, that sort of tech toy reason, and then actually playing them. And specifically the Soul Reaver games. I have never played the original Blood Omen or Blood Omen 2 because I couldn't get a hold of them back when they were popular. But Soul Reaver 1 and 2 are very formative games for me. I have so many emotional memories of playing those games. I don't have strong memories of playing it otherwise, right? Like, I have the emotional memory of sitting down with the controller, running through this world, defeating the vampire bosses, like, figuring out all the strange puzzles. And that affected me very deeply, but in terms of themes and story and stuff, I don't have clear memories of it. I don't clearly remember what happens in any of the games, really. Like, I know that they dealt with the idea of fate and averting fate and, like, the ways in which our fates are dictated by our own natures and stuff, but I couldn't be more specific than that. So, outside of that, I don't really have any thoughts. Isa, what is or are your comfort foods? Oh, spaghetti bolognese. Like, pasta with a tomato sauce with some beef in it, and just like whatever fucking vegetables, whatever things like mushrooms, whatever spices you have, anything. Just throw out all that shit in there, boil it up, make it real nice and good, pour it over some pasta, and I'm so fucking happy. It's a childhood comfort food for me. It always has been. I developed a gluten allergy some years ago, unfortunately, which has kind of curbed my consumption of pasta. I have found a good gluten-free pasta now. Like, it's made on, like, cornstarch and rice and some other things, I think, that tastes close enough that I can now enjoy it again. But that is if I just need some food I can shove in my face until I'm overstuffed and way too full and I need to lie down and have a really long, nice, like, food coma nap, that is the food for that. That is the comfort food. Arno, the blind stargazer. 2 questions. Do you prefer sweet or savory snacks? Probably sweet. And what is your idea of hell? Not in a religious way, just ultimate torture. Probably torture. Just pain, continuously inflicted forever. That I don't have a creative vision of hell, really. It's suffering and hurting forever. That's the best I got for you there. Follow-up question to that from Isa. What do you think happens after you die? Do you believe in reincarnation? I don't think what happens after you die is the answer to that. That's one of those questions, religious questions, that I have sort of decided that I don't care that much. At least for the purposes of living my life, I kind of have to not give a shit about that because... Well, first of all, because knowing the answer doesn't change anything. Unless it's specifically a thing of, like, if you don't behave according to this one specific religious text, you're going to suffer or you're going to go to hell. Yeah, in that case it matters, but it's also an unknowable question. Nobody who has died for real died, has ever come back to tell us what happens after we die. Like, we have some people who've experienced, like, near death or being temporarily dead kind of thing, saying, oh, there was a white light and all my friends and parents were there, which, like, could just be the delusions of a dying mind as the oxygen runs out. Who knows? We don't actually know what happens after you die. We don't know if you have a soul. And because it can't be known, And because knowing the answer, I don't think would change very much, probably. I just don't think about it, because if I start to think about it, I spiral into intense existential dread, and I lose my ability to actually live my life, which I think is substantially more important than fretting over what happens after it ends. But if anyone out there has the secret to immortality, please do get in touch. Which Mario Party game is the best Mario Party? Oh, yeah, RC Scooters asks that. The only Mario Party game I have any memory of playing is the one where there's that mini game where you have to rotate the stick on the N64 controller really fast, and like a lot of people had the skin torn off their hands from it. And the reason why I have a strong memory of playing that game is because I got the skin torn off my hands from it. It's a pain memory. I remember the fucking pain of doing that. And that's the only Mario Party memory I have. I don't think I've really played that series at all. Yosa Yoran. This was probably asked before, but will you analyze some LOR content or Wild Rift skins? Yes, is the answer to that. Don't know when. So I can't really give you any insight on that. But yes, I will at some point. Serious question time from Vega. How do you think your own personal queerness, if you're okay with that word being used on you, I am, it's the best word for whatever the fuck I am, shaped your content, and if you're comfortable talking about your worldview as a whole? I mean, not in any particularly unique or interesting way, I think. Just, like, realizing that I am aromantic and what that means for me is not... I don't have a conscious experience of being very affected by it. I think. Certainly not in terms of my content. Like, the fact that I'm personally queer, like, fall under that label, that umbrella, is not really... I don't think that is why, and I don't think it should be why I try to make my content queer-friendly. Like, why I try to... I attempt, as best as I can anyway, to include queer perspectives and, like, bring up queer interpretations and like create a space for queerness to exist on my channel. That's... I would rather not think that that's just because I personally happen to fall under the label myself. Like, maybe, I mean, I'm sure that it affected me in that sense, but I don't think it shaped my content in a way that I've actively ever thought about as such. I think you should just be welcoming to queer people because that's the right thing to do. And shaping my worldview is like... I mean, in profound ways, and also not at all. I think, like, I mean, I'm certainly conscious that for all of my privilege, like, I'm cis and I'm white, right? Like, and I'm middle class and I live in a Scandinavian country. For all of that, for all of the privileges and protections that I have, because I do fall under the queer umbrella, because I am aromantic, I am a target for oppression if white supremacy wins out, right? Not the first in line, like, it's gonna be black trans people, probably, because that's always fucking, like, they always come for the most vulnerable first, and I'm not among the most vulnerable, but I am vulnerable. But, like, it shapes my worldview in the sense that even my relatively uncontroversial queerness, which is that, hey, I don't feel romantic attraction. Oh, hey, you're a dude, what else is new? Ha ha ha, everyone hates women, right? Ha ha, like, you know, like, even in the sense that I have that passing privilege, as it were, I'm still targeted for destruction. Like, if the Nazis win, if the white supremacists take over, I will be eliminated too. I, too, am not acceptable to a fascist worldview. So, it shapes me in that sense. It makes me very conscious that, for all that I have a lot of protection already, I need the solidarity of my queer siblings. And I need to give them my solidarity as well, because that's the only way we all survive fascism, is if we all look out for each other. So, I guess in that sense, but like, not really outside of that. And, like, no, actually, going back to that, there's also much more personal stuff that I'm not saying, because it's personal, and I would like to keep that private, please. But that's as much as I'm willing to say in a video like this. Leviathan, what new albums have you been enjoying this year, if any? Let me look at my list. Because I found Poor Man's Poison this year, and they have, like, an album called Poor Man's Poison. It was a TikTok sound, like, Hell's Coming With Me, like, I am the righteous hand of God. That one, is on that album. That's a really nice, like, sort of folk punky, like American roots, American folk album. I found, like, I've been listening to Beyonce's Renaissance this year, which is pretty good. It's not her best album, I think, but then I'm not really someone who's particularly good to judge that sort of thing. What else do we got? Oh yeah, Willow. Willow's Lately I Feel Everything, pretty damn fucking solid modern pop punk album, and also other genres on top of that. What else we got? The Midnight. Right, The Midnight released Heroes this year, which is like, The Midnight is like a 80s synthwave kind of, like, vaporwave kind of band. Some really solid singles and some really solid songs on that one. Carly Rae Jepsen's The Loneliest Time is good. Taylor Swift's Midnight has like 2 good songs on it, but you know, I've still been listening to it a lot. I found Ghost as well from TikTok also, because of the Mary on a Cross sound that went viral on that platform. And so I've been listening to their Impera album, which I think is quite good. Anything else that I really... nothing that's worth mentioning. Like, I picked up a Kate Bush Greatest Hits compilation. Again, TikTok, because of running up that hill. Also just because I've been meaning to listen to her music forever. And I've been sort of slowly getting into that. It's a very different vibe from most of the music I listen to, so it's been taking me a while to sort of work my way into it. Let's see. My brain is not a squid. What is your vetting system for watching new suggested content on YouTube or Twitch? For example, do you scroll a year of previous uploads to see if a content creator is worth giving some time to watch, or do you come to that decision after watching a few videos? Or are you at the stage where you have curated the content enough that you never pay attention to the suggested page anymore? I don't really pay attention to suggested pages much, no. Like, occasionally I'll click on something, but, like, I've also spent a lot of time trying to train the goddamn recommendation algorithms into not sending me garbage. Like, a lot of clicking not interested, a lot of clicking dislike, a lot of blocking people, like, a lot, to the point where nowadays the algorithm doesn't really, the algorithm ever suggests me something toxic or ugly, it's easy to identify. There is a tool called Shinigami Eyes, which specifically relates to transphobia. Like, it's a user-created flagging system where people can sort of flag this creator or this content is safe or unsafe for trans people. In the terms of, like, whether they advocate for trans genocide or not, as it were, or whether they just, like, fail to, like, whether they platform transphobes and shit like that. And that can be helpful. But no, I don't really have a vetting system as such. Like, if I find a new YouTube creator, I trust myself to be able to watch their video and kind of be able to broadly tell where they are in terms of the vibes that they give off. I'm not perfect. I don't have 100%, radar on that shit, but for the most part, I can kind of tell. Like, the red flags and, like, the vibes, I have attuned myself finally enough that most of the time I can kind of spot it from a mile away and just avoid it. So I don't have a system, I just have a series of gut feelings and vibes, for the most part. Arno the Blind Stargazer, what time is it when you're reading this question? It is 10:15 in the evening. Plague Amon, I know you talked about character designs from the Fate franchise a few times in the past. What's your opinion on the Fate franchise shows overall? I don't have one. When I have talked about Fate character designs, I have investigated those specific characters because people asked me to. I have never really engaged with Fate as a franchise at all. So I don't have any broad opinion on Fate. I really don't. Willie asks, I've mostly consumed content from you that's been about League and Arcane and so on. I wanted to ask more than one question. Yes, that's fine. How did you discover such an important piece of media for... It's fucking Eidolon. Haley, it's your fault. You know this. Back in Season 2, Haley, my friend, she introduced me to it. Bitch. I'm sorry. It's just like, she introduced me to it and it ruined my life forever. Haley is one of my oldest friends. She's wonderful. I love her very much, and I have forgiven her for introducing me to League of Legends. Do you play the actual game, or do you only focus on the media surrounding it? I play ARAM every once in a million years. I'll play an ARAM just for fun. I play TFT, and I play Legends of Runeterra. I have not touched League of Legends itself for years at this point. Zalaman, what do you think about the followers of the apocalypse? I don't know what that is, but you should probably not encourage apocalypse. That's bad. Vega, how are you feeling about Dancy Boy Quaxley? I love Quaxley. Quaxley is good. Any other Pokemon designs you really like? Yeah, but I have a whole series of shorts about that on my shorts channel, so you'll have to watch that one for the answer to those questions. This is mainly a joke question. You have alluded to this on Twitter and in passing comments on your Let's Plays, and the world needs to know whether you're a top or a bottom. Only one way for you to find out. RC Scooter, are you a fan of theater, and do you have any plays you feel are particularly worth going to a theater to see? I've never had enough money to be a theater fan, and I've never lived anywhere near a good theater enough, like close enough that I could really catch many performances. I did watch a production of Phantom of the Opera at the Royal Theatre many years ago. That was fantastic. Absolutely. It was in Danish, which is not the ideal language for that musical, but I enjoyed it a lot. But if I kind of feel like you could never go wrong with Macbeth. Like, I think it's hard to fuck Macbeth up completely. I'm sure someone's done it, but if you want to watch, like, a play that is understandable, like, especially a Shakespeare play that's kind of accessible and understandable in its way, Macbeth is a good one to go to. Just like, the only way you can really fuck it up is the way that the movie adaptations have done, like the one with Michael Fassbender and the one with Denzel Washington, because they both cut out all the comic relief. They both just get rid of it, and they're so ponderous and self-serious and like, oh, yes, now is the winter, blah, 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 blah. Herbalist, that's a dagger I see before. Great performances from Fassbender and Denzel Washington in both of those, but there's comic relief in Macbeth. There should be. Like, there's a whole scene, like, I saw a performance of Macbeth many years ago from, like, this theater troupe of just three people, who changed roles, like, played multiple parts just by swapping hats as they spoke. Like, it's just like one of them would come and give a monologue and then put another hat on and respond to their own monologue, and it was really well put together. Like, they did really a lot with very little. They had no props except the hats, no swords, no nothing, no stage, no staging or anything. Just three people performing the play by knowing their parts really well, and they included all the comic relief bits, and they were fucking great. Like, even though many of the reference, but like, there's like a whole monologue about whiskey dick, about just having being super horny because you're drunk, and also having limp dick because you're drunk. And you can't cut that out of Macbeth. It's not Macbeth anymore. So find a performance where that stuff is included, and you're gonna have a good time. Dimas Saguya, have you seen any foreign language film? I mean, every single American movie I've ever watched is a foreign language film to me. This is something that I don't know if you're American specifically, Dimas, but like, most of the world mostly watches foreign language. Well, maybe not in India. They have their own, like, very strong film industry, in China, I guess, as well. But, like, most of Europe anyway. Let's not say most of the world. Let's say mostly Europe. Primarily watch foreign language films. Like French films, German films, Swedish films, Norwegian films. I think I once saw a film that was filmed in Iceland by an Icelandic film crew. I've watched some Polish films, I've watched some Russian films, I've watched Italian films, like the Westerns especially, Spanish films. So like, I've most of the movies I have ever watched have been foreign language. Which ones did I find interesting? God, I don't have a great memory of it. I remember there was this Italian coming-of-age drama set during World War II, like the rise of Mussolini's fascists, that I remember liking a lot as a teenager, but I think part of the reason why I liked it is because it had a lot of boobs in it. Like, a lot of naked ladies were in there, a lot of sex scenes and stuff. It sort of dealt very frankly with teenage sexuality, so, like, no wonder teenage me found it compelling. Most recent film in terms of, like, what would be understood as foreign language, like Parasite was amazing. Train to Busan is, like, I sort of dove into a bunch of Korean language films. Train to Busan is fucking amazing. What's it called? The Handmaid, I think, is a Korean drama as well. Really fucking solid. Lots of lesbian love scenes in that one too. And also, lots of trauma and misery. As those, if you want to look for that. And if you want any Danish recommendations, like anything Mads Mikkelsen is in Danish is usually worth your time. Another Round, I think, is the English language name for the film he was in recently, which is about alcoholism in Danish society. That's worth watching. If you can find... God, what's it called? In Court in Lang... Quote in lang engelsk. What's it called? I'm just Googling it. Give me the English title of the movie, you fucking useless piece of shit. Oh my god. Shake It All About is what it's called. Shake It All About it's called in English, which is, I don't know what the fuck it's called that. If you can find that with some subtitles on it. Oh, shit. Because I was using the keyboard. There you are. That's a good movie. It's about like a gay man who struggles with like who falls in love with a woman that he's familiar with, and he's engaged to be married to a man, so it's a problem. And it's like a good little comedy drama. It's very Danish though. I don't know if most of its cultural references come across at all, but I liked it when I watched it 10, 15 years ago. Kara, how do American politics affect you? I'm always surprised in your videos about how much you know about American politics and how willing you are to speak up about the injustices of the country or the corporations like Riot. As someone who's been American my whole life, it always shocks me when people are so well-versed in current American politics. Is that a byproduct of you consuming so much American culture, or is it a pretty common thing? It's more specific to me than, like, a lot of Danish people don't engage that deeply with American politics. I think that's kind of unique to me, and the short answer as to how it affects me is it affects my friends. I have friends who live in the US who are affected by what happens there, and so I kind of naturally end up caring about it a lot. I also have a lot of audience in the US, so I do feel a little bit of a responsibility to, like, to be conscious of that, and, like, whenever I can put my audience to use somehow. Like, in terms of, like I've tried to be less preachy and speak up, like, when I feel like I can make some kind of an impact on things. It's something I struggle very much with, how to use my platform, really, and especially how to use it responsibly. I don't really know. But it's something I feel like I should be conscious of. And it's also just, like, if you're an American, you don't know this, but you guys export your shit. You know how many, like, there's a lot of QAnon in Germany right now. A lot of fucking QAnon. There's a lot of anti-vax conspiracy bullshit that you guys, that comes from the US and also from the from Britain, that gets exported over to us via the internet, via cultural exchange, as it happens naturally. And so, like, it's a thing of, like it's not necessarily that that Europeans want to know that much about American politics, but, like, George W. Bush dragged my country into Iraq and Afghanistan, and soldiers from my nation helped enact imperialism in those countries because of fucking George W. Bush, because of 9/11, which didn't affect us. It wasn't a terrorist attack on us, but George W. Bush, among others, managed to create this huge, like, neoliberalism, and Western democracy itself is under attack. So now you guys have to do imperialism with us, which Europe doesn't need much convincing to do that, obviously, because we're very fond of neocolonialism ourselves. But, like, you guys export your shit. Globalism has made it sort of inevitable. Not globalism, globalization. Globalism is a different thing. That's more of the conspiracy theory bullshit. It has made it kind of inevitable. And so it's like, and also, like, the Paris Agreement, like, even if not in terms of, like, wars and shit, environmentalism, the world is burning. It is boiling to death, and you guys are a big part of the reason why. And you guys also export a lot of the climate denialism. So, you know, that's kind of why. It's very, very hard to be European and not be affected by American politics. But I am more affected than most, and I am more informed about it than most, I think. Which is to say, I waste more of my life caring about it than most. Like, I'm never watching American election coverage ever again. I'm going to bed and I'm just waiting for the results, because it nearly fucking killed me in 2016. So yeah, it's I have friends who are affected by it, and it affects me too, even though I would really wish it wouldn't, because there's no getting around the superpowers in a post-Cold War world, or indeed in a pre-Cold War world, or ever. The struggle for liberation is global, I guess. I'm not thinking of some kind of socialist platitude I could throw out here, but mostly it's just... This shit hurts my friends, you know? Matrox DX. I recently became a YouTube member to watch Dad of Boy, and I've wondered, have you seen the Overly Sarcastic Productions channel? Yes, I watch a lot of OSP. So yeah, I'm a fan of them. People have asked me, hey, would you want to collaborate with them? Yeah, I would love to have my content exposed to their audience and, like, gain the benefits of that, but also I don't know them. I feel like we could probably make something cool together. I think there's compatibility there, but also... They don't know me, I don't know them, and I don't want to bother them. Oh, this is more of a sort of... That kind of goes in the help section rather than the questions, but I'll answer it here. The writing you accept for critique for supporters, what do you think is a general word limit? You can submit as much as you want, but if you send me a novel, I'm not reading the whole thing. You don't have to worry about that so much. I will... skim as I'll read deeply as much as I feel like I have the time and ability to in order to provide some useful feedback, and then you'll get some useful feedback. Mirrors. Do you have an interest in fighting games? If not from a gameplay perspective, what about certain character designs? I have hiccups, sorry. That you appreciate from these games, and would there be some would be worth you making videos on, even if just in shorts format? Eventually, yes. I don't play fighting games much. Like, I used to play a bunch of Smash, never got good at it. And I've never gotten into proper, I say proper, but I've never gotten into, like typical fighting games. Street Fighter, King of Fighters, Tekken, all of that. Never really gotten into it. So, like, mostly I don't do content about it because it's not really my wheelhouse. But I definitely have been looking at Street Fighter recently, like Street Fighter 6 and the stuff they're doing, and thinking about, like, yeah, it would be worth doing some videos about, like how the character design of Guile has changed over the years, for example, would be an interesting topic. Like Ryu, like what the changes in his character design means, and like Ryu and Ken, as this, like, began as a palette swap, became separate characters, kind of like, there's some interesting stuff to talk about. So yeah, sure, maybe someday, but it's that usual thing of, like, the algorithm doesn't consider me a fighting game guy, and it won't recommend my videos to people who like fighting game stuff because it thinks that my channel isn't for fighting game people. And so making content about it from a business perspective is a risky business. Like, it's something that will tank the momentum of my other videos, and that, like, there'll be a price to pay for that, to sort of try and work that into my content rotation. So shorts, maybe, because that I can kind of do whatever the fuck I want over there. And I'll definitely be playing Project L when it comes out on my Let's Play channel, for sure. Making content about it on the main channel probably also. But from a business perspective, it's not necessarily a good idea. KO Joe. Hello, Skyner. Appreciate and enjoy. Blah blah blah. Compliments. I appreciate the compliments. I don't want to sit here and just read compliments to myself out loud, because I feel like that's a little self-indulgent. Your question is, have you ever played Omori or plan to? I've never played it. I want to play it someday. It's in the backlog along with other games like, Disco Elysium and so many other fantastic games that I want to play that I haven't had time to. So it's on the list. I don't know that I can promise ever making any content about it. LZ, how far could Brick Ulfam throw a Lalafell, assuming he's an Ul'dan fueled by rage at this particular Lalafell's economic exploitation of the poor and needy? I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. In light of your namesake's debut in official League lore, can we start calling you Lorekeeper Skyen? You have my permission to do that. And yes, I am canon in League of Legends. Not quite as canon as Necrit, perhaps, but I am canon. And one note, by the way, I've seen people say, oh, but he's a Kayle follower in that game, and maybe that's an insult because he hates Kayle and he thinks she's a shit character. No, I don't. First of all, thank you very much for misunderstanding me. I don't. There aren't any League of Legends characters that I hate. I really wish people would stop. I don't even hate Kai'Sa. Like, there are no League of Legends characters that I hate. I have criticisms of them. And there's a difference. Like, it's not they're not people. They're not human beings. They're not real. Don't waste your time hating them. What the fuck are you doing? I think Kayle is not a very great character design for the story that she's trying to tell, but I think she's telling an interesting story. Like, please stop it with that. Secondly, I know the writer who made me canon in Legends of Runeterra. They asked if they would be allowed to do that. They did it because they wanted to do something nice for me, right? They weren't trying to insult me. They weren't playing a prank on me. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't some kind of shitpost. It was a thing they had the opportunity to do, and they wanted to do it because we're friends. Like, it's nepotism. I fully admit that, and I'm perfectly happy to receive it. But, like, please, like, this is my fucking friend you're talking about. Like, they weren't trying to insult me. So I want to stop. Like, I can't prevent people in general, League Twitter or whatever, from throwing that bullshit around. But at least in my community, I do want it to be known that this is something that was a kindness that was done for me. For which I am grateful forever. Just wanted to get that out of the way. Casual Cat Lady. I thought your video on cultural appropriation in God of War was really interesting, and I wanted to ask you if you think Vikings is a faithful representation of how Vikings were. Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen Vikings, but no, it isn't. Like, I've seen screenshots from the show enough to be able to tell you that no, it isn't. 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 And that's not because there's anything particularly wrong with Vikings, but just because, like, there are no good pop cultural depiction of what the Vikings were really like, because what the Vikings were really like is boring. They, like, most people who sailed out as Vikings were farmers or fishermen or like the people who led those kinds of raids would usually be like dispossessed sons of nobles, like dispossessed sons of nobles or rich people or chieftains or leaders who didn't really have any, like, who were cut off from inheritance, and like if they wanted to build a fortune for themselves, it was pretty much just go out and raid, because you don't own any property, you don't have any land, you have to steal some shit from other people if you want to have something in your life. Those are, like, the interesting characters. Those are the ones that the sagas tend to be about. But most of them were just fishermen. Like, a lot of Viking raids happened because a trading vessel would come to a village and be like, hey, we've got stuff for trade. We got stuff to trade. Why don't you come down and we trade some stuff, and then we do business. And then people come and they go and do business with the trader, and then the trader goes away, sails to the Orkney Islands usually, like sails up north of Scotland, and meets up with a whole bunch of other people, and is like, hey, I found this village, and I spent some time there, and I scouted out all of their defenses. Let's go down there, land, like, raid the place, take some slaves, steal everything that isn't nailed down, and fuck off before anyone can stop us. And it wasn't like glorious berserker Viking combat, rah, blood for the blood god, Odin. Blah. It wasn't that. It was a bunch of drunk frat boys showing up to fucking loot a place and fuck off before the police could show up. Like, that's what it was. It was mundane. It wasn't glorious. It wasn't special. It wasn't dramatic. And there were blood feuds and shit like that, but that was just, like, the petty infighting of a bunch of, like, feudal nobles fighting over their turf. They weren't interesting. Some pop cultural depictions of the Vikings are universally wrong because they're much more entertaining and interesting than the actual real people were. And also they tend to focus, like most depictions of Viking culture, tend to focus on warrior culture, right? Like the culture of the people who did the violence, who did the murdering and the bloodshed for a living, which is not most people. The vast majority of people didn't do that very much at all. The vast majority of people were concerned about getting the harvest in, or catching enough fish to last through the winter, or hunting game. Like, most of them were just normal people, right? So it's like, yeah, every pop cultural depiction of the Vikings, I say this with confidence, is wrong and highly over-dramatized and highly over-glamorized, and that includes that Vikings show. Which doesn't mean you're not allowed to enjoy it, by the way. Like, if you have fun with any of it, enjoy it. It's just, remember that it's bullshit in terms of historical accuracy. No matter what the showrunner's like, oh, we consulted with Viking experts from Scandinavia. Shut the fuck up. No, you didn't. Well, maybe you did, but you didn't listen to them. Because bullshit. Like, Hollywood bullshit. Anyway, how do you do the subtitles? I think this is the last question, by the way. How do you do the subtitles on your shorts video? They're very readable. Right. So, Adobe Premiere Pro, the very expensive program that I pay way too much money for because of fucking Adobe are parasites, does have a really cool feature, which is automatic transcription. So you put your audio file in your video, and then you tell Adobe, hey, transcribe this audio, and then it does that, and it gets it like 80% right most of the time. It doesn't know any of the names of champions in League of Legends. Like it misinterprets them all. Like Viego was Diego in every single video I did about him until I corrected it myself. But it transcribes like 80% correctly the whole thing and creates automatic subtitles. You correct those, and then you just put it out there. And what I do for the shorts video specifically, I have iterated on that a lot. I have defaulted to never having more than like 2 or 3 lines, having fairly large text centered and at the top of the screen, because in shorts formats like TikTok and YouTube, the bottom and the right side of the screen are usually occupied with interface. So the top of the screen is really where most of the real estate is for text and stuff. So that's how I do that. And yeah, that was the last of the questions. We got through it all in under an hour even, which good on me. It usually takes me longer than that. Anyway, if you want to submit questions for this thing and ask me stuff, pay me some money in some way, anyway, like a one-time donation, Patreon, memberships, whatever you want to do, whatever you don't want to do, you can do that. And then I'll become a cat and I will read your question and I will talk about it in a video like this one. So I hope you've had fun. I hope you've been entertained by this, and I hope you have a good day.